Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Christensen. This is Horror 101 with Dr. AC, celebrating classic horror throughout history with new episodes every Friday night. From its harrowing opening sequence to the breathtaking climax, Steven Spielberg's hugely successful masterpiece of suspense and thrills, Jaws from 1975, scared audiences out of the water and into theaters in record-breaking numbers. On the surface, the plot is simplicity itself. The locals of the northeastern island town of Amity start turning up as fish food when an enormous great white shark materializes, leaving fear and body parts in its wake. Peter Benchley's adaptation, with able help from Carl Gottlieb, of his own bestseller, charts the wise course of creating vivid characters that are as memorable as the scenes of teeth-chomping terror. Armed with a top-notch cast of Roy Scheider as the local sheriff with a healthy fear of water, Richard Dreyfuss as a feisty oceanic expert, and the brilliant Robert Shaw as the gnarled shark hunter Quint, there is nary a wasted on-screen moment. Despite being plagued with endless technical problems during production, the 26-year-old Spielberg ratchets up the tension time and again, each sequence more nail-biting than the last. And his efforts are made all the more effective by John Williams' Oscar-winning score, one of the most famous in movie history. By focusing equally between its engaging, likable human protagonists and the monster shark's mayhem, a modern horror classic emerged, one that still commands our respect and enthusiasm a half-century later. We're celebrating 50 years of the world's biggest fish story. We're talking Jaws at 50, and we have an incredible panel to chat about with me. Let's bring everybody in, and let's say hello to Ryan Olson.
Hi, how's it going?
Fraser Coffeen.
Hi there.
Katie McLean Hainsworth.
Hello.
Anish Jethmalani.
Hello.
And beaming in from across the big old pond, Kevin Matthews.
Hi, everyone.
And we're going to be talking Jaws from 1975, celebrating its 50th anniversary, as well as its slew of sequels. Jaws 2 from 1978, Jaws 3D from 1983, and Jaws The Revenge from 1987. And we will be talking spoilers all night long. Everyone just get ready. We're going deep. You see what I did there? Thanks for coming on the show and welcome. Oh my gosh. Okay. So this is probably the biggest movie we've covered. Obviously, The Exorcist is certainly one that looms large. As I was going through all the documentaries and the books and the supplements, I was like, this is huge. This movie left such a massive impression on pop culture. Ryan, would you kick us off? How did you come to Jaws for the first time?
I did see it on TV as a kid. Growing up, I've always had a fascination with sharks and loved anything relating to sharks. You know, they started doing National Geographic, like the Blue Water, White Death, and all that stuff. I was always interested in all that stuff because I love sharks. One day, a copy of the novel appeared on my dresser as a kid. It was the version that has the legendary art. And I was always super fascinated and perplexed by it. I'd just sit there and stare at it, absorbing every detail of it, just, you know, the menace of the shark and the lady swimming at the top. It's one of those movies that like I said, I can't remember exactly the first time I saw it, but every time since when I was growing up, if it was going to be on TV, my parents knew I had to watch it. Even to this day, I mean, it's got to be one of the movies I've seen the most. And I mean, even my youngest son, Thorin, he has taken up the mantle, and Jaws is one of his favorite movies, and he's a pretty rabid nut about it too, just like his dad.
Kevin, I'm going to bounce now to you. A couple of years back, we covered that sharksploitation documentary, so I was already well aware of your love for this movie. How did it come to you for the first time?
Yeah, I might have mentioned on the sharksploitation chat. It was on British TV late at night, and we had a weatherman who was called Michael Fish. So sometimes before the big movie, you would get the weather. I was like, here's the weather with Michael Fish, and now Jaws. So that was a bit of a gag when you taped it off the TV. At that moment, I saw it then. Probably not, not the best way to see it. I doubt it was shown in widescreen format, but it made an impact straight away. The shores of Scotland aren't known to be major hunting grounds for great white sharks, but I just thought after that moment, if I dipped a toe anywhere in a river, I could be eaten by a shark. And I've still felt that way every year since. So
Anish, how about you?
Yeah, so my first exposure to Jaws was actually when I was a little kid. My parents probably didn't know any better, taking me to the movie theater. I didn't go when it first released in 75, but I think it had subsequent re-releases during that time period. So we went to the movie theater. It was kind of a double feature. And I just remember having nightmares uh, after seeing the movie with actually a shark pretending to come into my room, and that's how bad it was. So it left definitely an impression on me. Like everybody else here, I came to see it on reruns over television, and then VHS tape, and just came to appreciate it more and more on subsequent viewings. And like Ryan, I've probably seen it. One of the movies that I've seen the most over many, many, many years, and still love it to this day.
Fraser, how about you?
I grew up in a household that had a lot of videos at home. My dad was an avid home recorder, recording movies off of HBO and Showtime and Prism and Cinemax and things like that. I've shared this on here before. So many that we had a card catalog of the amount of movies, hundreds of movies that were in our house. And it was very present. Double coded. You could do alphabetically or by genre. Yeah. And all four of the Jaws movies were in there. And I saw them very young. I have zero recollection of a time that I had not seen, particularly the first one and like the second half of Jaws 2. I as a kid, I didn't really distinguish between those two things. That seemed like just one complete film to me. But they just have been a part of my life from my earliest knowledge of film. I also am one of those people that, similar to what Kevin was saying, got really messed up by it in terms of my like fear of the water and things like that. I lived in New Jersey. I was born in New Jersey, so it kind of hit home. And I'm fine. I go in the ocean, but it definitely. If anybody says to me like, "What is it that you're scared of?" Sharks. That's the number one answer.
There's some famous shark attack stories from New Jersey from back in the day that I've read in shark attack books from when I was a kid as well. So yeah, I can understand. That would be very impactful for you.
It was right there, and like the town I lived in had a bit of we weren't like right on the coast, but had like a bit of the New England Amity vibe. They've forever been there for me.
And Katie.
Yeah, I also was too young to see it in the theater, but like with so many other things, my older brother and sister really keyed me into things I wasn't ready for all the time, having siblings who were that much older than me. So what my friend Susan and I did was checked the drawer of paperback novels that my parents kept under their bed. I don't think they were hiding them per se from us specifically, but like Carrie was in there in the stand, and was Jaws. So we read it before we ever caught the movie on cable or HBO, and we were way, way, way too young for the novel. Not appropriate at all for how old we were. But it did kind of prep us for when we finally did see it. We weren't like completely terrified. We were kids who vacationed on Cape Cod and stuff, so it all felt very familiar, but we weren't it did not give me nightmares. I saw it as a movie and not something that could really happen, even though what is so terrifying about the movie is that it is continually presented as something that could really happen.
I think for me, I did not see it for a very long time. I feel like my memory of watching it is in high school, and I remember being struck by how much of a drama it is. A human drama with a fish in it, a giant fish that wants to eat everybody. These performances are so good, and this movie is so good. I guess the first question is, do you all consider this a horror movie? I've had people question me. I mean, I included it in Horror 101 because it seemed like it was ridiculous not to. There are some people who have said that it is something else. I'm curious what people's thoughts are on that.
I certainly think it's one of the higher end horror movies. But the opening scene and Quint's death for me rank it as a horror movie, just full stop. That opening scene is unbelievably terrifying. And what Quint faces as he slides down the boat into the gullet of a shark is insanity inducing. So to me, it's horror, yes.
I definitely agree. I think it's absolutely a horror movie. The point of the movie is to scare you and terrify you, and it absolutely does that. I mean, we have our mutual friend, Mr. Kitley, who will not go in the water because of Jaws at all. He absolutely will not. I mean, it did for swimming what Psycho did for showers. I mean, it's a horror movie through and through. And I mean, you look at the advertising for it, they talk about it, they push it as a horror film, they say it's a horror movie.
I may come on the other side of this a little bit. I actually envisioned it as a horror film too, but I think it's more than that. I feel like it's morphed over time into becoming an adventure, a thriller, and a film that's actually a political commentary on politics as well. Because if you look at the character that Murray Hamilton plays, there's a lot going on there too that I think is kind of not as appreciated back then as it is now in terms of like the politics of Amity Island and how things kind of got a little bit not squared basically with the folks that were trying to keep people safe. So for me, I feel like it's become more of a commentary on social and political dynamics as well. But yeah, for sure, it's a horror movie, but more than that as well.
And
Absolutely.
environmental politics.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll add to that more. Obviously, as everybody who knows anything about it knows, it's the sort of genesis of the summer blockbuster, right? And that's sort of its own genre that typically does not have a very high crossover with horror. I would agree. I think it is horror, but it is able to touch on all of these other different aspects as well.
Well, for me, it's just a giant monster movie. Like it harkens back to those movies from the 50s and 60s where you had something that was bigger than it should be and was, menacing humankind. I'm like, well, if that's not a horror movie or at least a monster movie, what is it? But I think to what Katie and Ryan were saying, like, it's just so proficiently done. We're just not there's no cheesiness to it. And so I think that's where we go, well, hang on, like it's a prestige movie and it's a monster movie. How's that possible?
It's not a slasher movie, which we got very used to in the aftermath of this movie.
Well, I mean, Jaws 2 is a slasher movie.
Well,
yes. Yeah,
we're not talking about Jaws 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just slow your roll, Aaron.
Well, it's also Spielberg was really influenced by what he did with The Duel. And I think Jaws was becoming sort of inspired by that. In The Duel, he deals with the truck. Here, he's dealing with the shark, and it's basically taking that film and moving it to the open water.
That's exactly what he did.
And then he took it and moved it to a park.
That's right. But I would say The Duel is inspired by the monster movies of the 50s. It's an unstoppable force that is, attacking a normal human, and it feels like a supernatural element. Like there's something that is not natural about it. It is supernatural.
Something that cannot be controlled.
Yeah. And it does feel that way, that's supernatural. But I think what does sort of part of why it's a little bit harder to put in that horror box necessarily, as opposed to like Them or something along those lines, is that it is presented in, and Katie alluded to this before, this super realistic kind of way, to the point that, again, I watched it very young. It took me like decades to accept that was not how big sharks were, right? I just assumed that was the size of sharks for until I was like 20,
and then they made Jaws 4 and it was 35 feet.
Yeah.
Come on.
But because it is presented in this very real, you never think it's not, ants don't get that big. But this is presented in such a very hyper realistic way to be like, no, that totally, I mean, yes, it's a bigger shark than normal, but it's a realistically big shark.
It is.
Yeah.
I'd be remiss, though, if I didn't also add in there that a friend of the show of ours, Art Ettinger, is fond of calling Jaws a maritime musical adventure, is what he describes it as. That's his description.
We have at least 2 songs in there. Kevin?
It's definitely horror for me, but I forget what it was rated over your side of the pond.
PG,
yes. And because I'd seen it recorded off the TV, I had this illicit thrill and thought, this is something I'm not supposed to see. When I first saw Jaws on VHS in the wild, as it were, and saw the PG sticker, I felt like running up to people and being like, so children can just legally sit and watch us? Like, what are you doing? It was insane to me that it was a PG. It has been recertified over time. Over here, I think it's now a 12 because as they've cleared up the picture again, I think you can see a bit more detail on some of the a couple of the gore gags. But yeah, for years it was a PG, and I was stunned by that.
Over here, no one was paying attention to us in the 70s and early 80s, so it did not matter what the rating was.
This is one of those movies that, yes, the storytelling is so good, the acting is so good, and the direction. This is Spielberg's second feature film. He'd done episodic TV, he'd done dual for TV, which had later gotten a theatrical release, but he was a relatively unknown, untested quantity, and he was tasked with basically an impossible movie. And he kept making it more impossible because he wanted to lean into that realism of shooting out on the open water, not on the back lot. In all of these documentaries, you just keep coming up this notion of what were they thinking? How could they give this project to this young kid and have this kid have the vision to be like, we can make this happen? That's one of the things that I keep coming away from every time I watch it. We just buy into it without thinking about how impossible this movie is.
I don't think you could make Jaws today. It just would not be possible the way they were able to greenlight some of these decisions back then. Although Spielberg had, some modest success with Duel and with some of the television programs he had done, I think it was a big leap of faith that they put it into this young man's hands, and he had a passion for it. He picked up the script and read it right away, and he's like, I need to do this. I need to tell this story. And the fact that he put so much on the line in terms of trying to stay true to the vision that he wanted is a testament to his creativity and his ability to kind of persevere through all of the troubles that laid ahead for him. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, in a moment. But it was definitely a leap of faith, I think, on the part of everyone who wanted to actually do this movie.
I also think Jaws wasn't Jaws until he made it. So it wasn't like right now we can think, oh my God, I can't believe that somebody who only made one movie before made this movie.
Right.
We didn't know it was going to be this movie. And it wouldn't have been this movie unless it was Steven Spielberg. So he's the only one that can make this movie the way that it ended up. Otherwise, you end up with, frankly, Jaws 2, 3, and 4.
It makes me think about like Rosemary's Baby, which was originally a William Castle production.
Yeah.
And I can imagine what the William Castle production of Rosemary's Baby might have been. And it probably would have been entertaining, but it would not have been Rosemary's Baby. And I feel like, we could have had a giant shark movie named Jaws, but it would not have been this Jaws, and it would not have had the cultural relevance that it does. It's just one of those things where it's such a miracle that everyone gets it right. Now, obviously, editing and the extended shooting and the expanded budget, all of those things facilitated being able to get it right. You just look at, there's just not a wrong step throughout this entire movie. That's a rare thing.
Right.
Yeah. And, one thing to note really quick, this movie was only supposed to be shot in 55 days. and that was the schedule for it. Yep. And it expanded like times 3 to 159 days. Yeah. So I think going back to the point of like not only taking a leap of faith on a young director, but a young director who was basically blowing up the budget and expanding the time horizon of the shoot and costing the studio money. Everybody felt, throughout the process, like this thing was going to be a turkey and never going to succeed. Yeah. And Spielberg kept feeling like he was going to get fired.
If I can jump in there, though, because I think what helped was having editor Verna Fields, who would go on and win an Oscar, having her there and assembling rough cuts of scenes and being able to send that back so that people could look at it and go, even without the shark, we'll get into the troubles with the mechanical shark in a second, but people could see that this was a film that really worked and that it wasn't going to be just throwing good money after bad. It was actually, this movie is taking shape. It's taking a long time to take shape, and it's taking a lot of money to take shape, but it is taking shape. And everybody who saw the footage was like, no, we got to keep going. This is a movie that needs to be finished. It's just going to burn a lot of film getting there.
You're totally right. And it's funny, though, that I think that is what we hear and what we know about it, right? That it did, took all this time and took longer than anticipated. And yet, I think it's worth pointing out that the book came out in February of 1974.
Right.
It is a very, very small window of time between the book coming out and the movie coming out. It could have been this very rush job kind of thing, because we had other movies like that, right? There's no reason that it couldn't have gone in sit next to Alligator and Orca and Grizzly. Like there's plenty of other examples of movies from this general time period that could fall into this category. Through his brilliance, was like, no, it's not going to be those things.
Well, and all those movies exist because of Jaws. I mean, you wouldn't
Right.
have Grizzly, Orca, or Alligator, or Piranha, or any of that stuff for that matter, if Jaws wouldn't have been what it is.
But they prove it wasn't a formula. It wasn't big creature behaving weirdly against people. It's not a formula. It's movie making and it's craft and it's talent and it's
the fact that it launched an entire shark subgenre that is, huge. There's, so many shark movies, and yet not a single one has even come within a whiff of being as good as it. The very first one. Like it's not even up for debate.
I just think it's miraculous that we did get the end product that we got, and it doesn't reflect any of that. You don't watch Jaws and you think, that bit would have been extra tricky. It all looks like a mammoth task because they've gone out onto the water, but you don't pick out any individual moments and think, I bet they were having a hard day there. And then you watch any of the documentaries or read any of the materials, and day 12, boat was sinking again, tried to rescue Richard Dreyfuss while the lamps were about to electrocute him. It's just craziness. And of that comes over on screen. You're just completely engrossed in this tale of these men and the shark. It's a testament to the work itself.
This movie does something, you talked about the opening, like it opens so strong with that cold open where we realize this is going to be a dangerous movie where we meet people and they die. And then we also spend time finding that character of Brody and his family and the residents of Amity. The menace of the shark is just percolating underneath it all throughout. There are plenty of movies where we get to know everybody and then something gets introduced and then things generally ratchet up. We start off at that and then we dip down, but that keeps humming underneath everything. We're watching the struggle for power. We're watching the politics. And meanwhile, that shark is out there swimming all the time. It's such a neat thing that we've seen people try to do before. I think about the movie Prophecy, where it has a great opening, but then the rest of the movie just cannot come back and be Jaws. There's one Jaws and it's this one.
Well, there's Jurassic Park, but okay.
There is Jurassic Park, I suppose. Who made that? Anyway.
It's the same movie.
Yeah. Talking about the performances, we have Richard Dreyfuss, Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, who all three of those characters become instantly iconic. Quint, Hooper, and Brody are names that you instantly know, you identify, and you're rooting for all of them in different ways. And that's also a nice magic trick, is that there's no bad guy here. Even the shark is not necessarily a bad guy. It's just
and even when there's conflict between them, you're still rooting for all of them.
That's right.
Yeah.
I can't speak highly enough about the character development in the script. I mean, you really look at someone like Quint and you look at someone like Hooper, and there's this whole social commentary on class. Mm-hmm. And they get into it, and that was actually extended into reality as well, in terms of the tension that was between Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss. But the characters themselves are talking about different ways of how they view the world. And Quint comes from a working class perspective. Dreyfuss comes more from a privileged scientific community. He has all the tools and the equipment. And Quint is more of the nature of we'll just do it by our hands. We'll do it the old fashioned way. That dynamic is very hard to capture in all of the subsequent films. And I think, again, it speaks to the craftsmanship of the screenplay.
And it does a lot with very little. Like the big change from the book is that Brody is not from the island. He came to the island recently from New York to take the job, and he's afraid of the water. Like that's just one very simple detail that tells you so much about who this guy is and how he approaches life.
There's a really quick, sorry to interrupt, but there's like a quick theory that the Brody character is unofficially the same character from the French Connection who moved to Amity Island. I thought that was funny. I mean, definitely not true, but
it's
funny. Now in my head.
It's a good one. You bring up the book, and when we were saying like there's no right, you're rooting for all three of these characters, but I do think that's something that's really great about the screenplay and about the way that Benchley made his adaptations and made changes into the screenplay. Because in the book, Hooper is not a great guy,
No.
and he gets like a villain's death. I mean, he's the bad guy. And I think it was a really great move to move away from that and to kind of make them these equals as they do in the screenplay.
Agreed too. Took away a little something from Ellen's character development, but we don't have time for that in the movie anyway. So
yeah, that just feels like the kind of thing that we don't have time.
They made choices. They made good choices. I thought.
You still get Ellen. Yeah. She is fantastic in the movie, and
she's just very different than she is in the novel.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. But I do think that she's not less than in the movie than the other. I think she pulls her weight and hangs with everybody just as much.
I certainly like her a lot more in the movie than I do in the book.
Yes, agreed.
And I like the courage that Spielberg and our screenwriters have in making different characters. As you said, Hooper is not the same Hooper. Brody's not the same Brody. Ellen is not the same Ellen. The dynamics are very different. I remember hearing about this affair with Hooper, for years. And I was like, how would that even work? But in the book, it's because they know each other from before, and Ellen is dealing with getting older and not feeling like she's part of her crowd anymore. And so the affair makes sense in the book in a way that it could never in the movie.
I am more traumatized by their dinner scene from the book than I am from any scene in the movie.
Yeah, you get the sense that the Brodys are a super tight unit. They love each other. The family is awesome. In the book, they're in trouble. And again, that changes the dynamic. I think because we like the Brodys, we are rooting for them 100%. We don't want anything bad to happen. We like Hooper, as weird and eccentric as he is. There's no like weird baggage that gets attached to it. And we like the fact that he is smart and he has different ideas. We like the fact that Quint is a man of the water, a man of the sea. He's smart. He has ideas. We love that Brody is a, quote, fish out of water, and still he's the guy in charge. And so he has to be there. It's just a great balancing act of all of those characters. And then you have the under the line characters of Ellen and Mayor Vaughn and all the little characters, the Kintners, etc.
Hendricks, yeah.
Jeffrey Kramer. I mean, he's great as the deputy Hendricks and doing what he does. And his role, I think, is just so perfect. He really does a perfect job of supporting Brody and all that stuff in the movie. I really liked that. And I actually was lucky enough to meet him at Horror Hound a bunch of years ago. And that was pretty cool.
Speaking of all of the supporting characters, I mean, the fact that, they were able to get so many locals to be a part of this movie. And that kind of brings me to Lee Farrell, her character of Mrs. Kintner. That scene for me is one of the most pivotal and important scenes in the movie where she has learned of her boy's death and she confronts Brody. And it's so powerful with a character who's, for the most part, pretty minor. To this day, like that scene in particular stands out and continues to resonate. And I think it just, again, is a testament to the people from that area who made the movie so great.
The script is really efficient in telling the story. I mean, we get right into it. We're right into things. And then a scene like that illustrates perfectly. It's only a couple of minutes, but it illustrates perfectly the emotional journey that Brody is on and the conflict within the town and why he is so desperate to take care of this problem somehow and take charge of this problem so he can stop feeling bad about the little Kintner boy.
The town is so rich and everybody in it has something interesting going on. Every like little character, the person who comes up and tries to talk to Brody while Brody's watching the water, the lady with the I don't think that's funny. I don't think that's
Mr.
funny at all.
Taft.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
my favorite, yeah.
Everybody
Ben
has
Gardner.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, Ben
Yeah.
Gardner's great. Just everybody's got like a little bit of something interesting going on.
Just enough
Yeah.
to tell us what
Yeah.
the personality of this town.
And Spielberg allowed them to improvise too.
Exactly.
Like the actor who played
Yeah.
Ben Gardner was basically saying
Yeah.
those things in real life.
Yeah.
Made up all his
Spielberg
lines.
is like
Yeah,
let's keep
yeah.
it. I don't know, it's great.
I don't know what he said, but it sounded good.
Exactly. Yeah, that's awesome.
And then you got Carl Gottlieb, who is like
Yeah,
instrumental to the entire franchise as one of the screenwriters. He brings in such humor and levity, which is he was tasked with that with the script as well. But also in terms of his acting appearance, he brings a levity to the scenes that he's in as well. So all of these characters really shape this world quite a bit outside of the main three.
Peter Benchley making an appearance too.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Stumbling up the sand, dude. I was like, no reporter would ever do.
I mean that that
Get
you're
the
so
shot.
just to add a little bit of a cherry on top of everything else.
Well, and I think that's Spielberg's instincts, right? Is that he trusted that he would be able to get performances from the locals, that it was important to shoot at Martha's Vineyard to capture that community feel. And the notion of, there are the islanders and then there are the visitors, there are the folks who grew up on the island. When do I get to be an islander? You
Ellen,
don't.
never.
Right.
You don't get to be an islander.
Spielberg also had experience of that because he did a similar type of thing on Sugarland Express, where they cast a lot of locals and people that were just kind of in the areas where he was shooting, and he had such great success doing that. And that's why he kind of took the same plan when he went with shooting at Martha's Vineyard. He was like, okay, well that worked great in the last movie, so let's do it again.
Also, he couldn't afford more actors, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that too.
Can't afford to lodge anybody. Well, that was an expense that kept increasing because they started in the off season, but they eventually moved into the high season, and so they were paying premium lodging and restaurant fares, etc. Kevin, I want to throw the ball to you. Let's talk about Bruce, the mechanical shark. He becomes a very important character, one that we are only introduced very slowly, mostly through like the POV shots at the beginning, but then we get to see him front and center.
In case I forget to mention it elsewhere, I can be a little bit smug and mention about 7 years ago, I think, when I was still in Edinburgh, I did see the run of the play about the three leads there. And if you get a chance to go and see it, Robert Shaw is played by his son, who looks like he's been cloned from Robert Shaw. It's really good. And obviously it is, every scene is kind of the shark's not working. That's it. And that's the famous tale of this. But people say that is a strength of the film. It did improve the film. And while I agree, I'll probably be in the minority here. Like, I still think the shark looks really good and terrifying. There are one or two moments where it doesn't. But for the most part, I would not go in a pool with that shark there as a prop. I've seen that photo with Spielberg resting in the jaws. Like, there's not a chance I would even do that in case some pneumatic valve failed and it was some Final Destination incident with me. Not a chance. To me, it's still a real creature on screen. And there are a couple of shots of that just moving. You're above the water seeing it swim through, and it's still terrifying to me. Near the end is where you see the rubbery covering and the loose joints, I would say. But for the most part, I still think it looks like probably one of the most realistic giant creatures we've had in horror cinema.
Have you seen the sequels?
Yes, yes. I'm not
did a pretty good
on
job.
those at this point. Yes, and I wouldn't say they maintain a consistent finish on the shark at the sequels. They get to a point where it's just basically a painted balloon. But for Jaws, it still really works start to finish for me almost.
Well, and we hadn't seen that before. I mean, we hadn't seen a giant shark before. So I think in the story itself, we are buying in. And so when we do get those, big showcase moments where we're seeing the the shark in all of its glory, we've bought in. We're like, yep,
Yeah.
I want that shark to be climbing up on top of that boat. I want to see the whole thing. And I think it does play well enough that we're able to go along. It doesn't take us out of it. It's not like King Kong, where we see the giant robot of King Kong, where you're like, well, that's not Rick Baker. That is a giant robot.
Going back to Spielberg's sort of idea, and I think Ryan alluded to this earlier in the conversation, that the idea of not seeing this creature and leaving it to your imagination for most of the movie, almost 3/4 of the movie, you don't see the shark. It's like you're seeing people affected by the shark in various ways, or you see subtle hints of the shark. Even in the case of the Kittner killing, you're only seeing blood spew up in a very violent way, but it leaves more to your imagination as a viewer, and it makes it that more terrifying. So that when you get to the actual moments where the shark appears, then yes, it does feel like, oh my goodness, this is a creature that is, it just blows your mind, like what this animal can do. I love that Spielberg really gives the audience the room to use their imaginations more as they're watching this, and it never gets tiresome. Every subsequent view, you're watching this and you're just thinking, how terrifying is it when you're not even seeing the thing actually on the screen.
We watch this every year, and I never don't gasp when I see the size of Chrissy's remains in the autopsy room when they're covered, and it's just this little bundle of a person, what used to be a person. That's more chilling to me than seeing the whole shark all the time.
And it's Dreyfuss's reaction to uncovering, which is, he grabs,
he turns around and he's like, I'm sorry, this is it? What, are you serious?
Yeah.
And then he gags.
This is not an accident or something. Yeah. That's what he says.
It's not a boating accident.
One other thing I should mention really quick, because to underscore also not seeing the creature, one of the beautiful elements of this movie is the score. And so John Williams really, this is, I think, one of his best scores in his entire career. And I think that without that iconic score, it just doesn't make the film it is. And I think it really brings that last element to the viewing experience.
I agree entirely with everything Anish said, and I think the best example of that is how scary and creepy the yellow barrels, right? Just the shot of like the barrel popping up is enough to be like, shark. And like, I am terrified of that barrel. I'm not seeing anything. I'm seeing a barrel, and yet it's completely freaky. And obviously, just to build on what you said there, the score is, of course, so great, and a great piece of filmmaking that I love so much in the use of that score is the absence of it in Quint's death, and the fact that that it's been, we've had so much score throughout the movie, and then at that point to drop it out and to allow Robert Shaw's absolutely horrific screaming to just be the score.
If I could add in one thing to the shark thing as well, one of my favorite sequences in the movie is kind of the first reveal of where you kind of get a first glimpse of the shark, is when he knocks the guy out of the boat and he's climbing back in, and you see it under the water just coming to grab him with the mouth open, rolled on its side like a shark would do. I mean, to me, that is not only an incredibly fantastic and beautiful piece of filmmaking and shooting, but just that idea of seeing it just below the surface. It doesn't break the surface, and you just know this guy's doomed. And I mean, obviously it cuts to his leg falling down there, but that's like kind of the first time you really get to see it, even a little bit, because with Kittner, you just get the couple of the fins and that. But I mean, it's like, that thing to me, it just is totally chilling the whole time. And also with the score, I like that they stay true with it. They don't try to cheat by playing the music and the shark's not there. Every time you hear that music, the shark is there. It's not like, oh, we're going to try to, throw you a curveball here and there and play it. No, every time you hear that music, shark time.
Do they not play it with the cardboard fin?
No.
I don't know if I've ever noticed.
No, they
don't. I think they do.
Okay.
No, they don't. No, because I believe I forget if it was John Williams or Spielberg, but one of them actually made it a point. They talked
we
about
have to
that
play
in one of
fair.
the documentaries where they're like,
great.
we made it a point of not trying to cheat the audience, so that whenever the score you heard those notes, Bruce was coming.
That's great.
If you listen to the Jaws soundtrack, I mean, it's not just the horrific moments that Williams really gives this beautiful sort of sense of what the storyline is, but it's also the other elements of the music. You know, there's a particular track called Out to Sea where they're first going out to get the shark, you know, Quint and Brody and Hooper, or the final moment where they're swimming back and you hear that sort of ease of the score. It has all these kind of combination of sea shanties and sort of old fabled tales. And he really gives the flavor of that New England style of maritime life in this score. And I think he just brings you into that world so easily with the work he does.
Well, we've talked about the effectiveness of when we see the shark and when we don't see the shark. And so much of that was born of the fact that they didn't have a shark to work with for the longest time. And so they were trying to find ways to work around. Like the barrels idea was born of, what can we do to represent the shark without having to actually show the shark that we don't have yet? Those are the things that really have contributed to the film's success and legacy, is that we just see enough of it. And I think originally the idea was to see much more of it, which is what, when we see Jaws 2, we see a lot more of the shark because, hey, we figured it out. You like the shark? Here, we'll show you more shark. And we realize, no, that's actually not what we want. We want less shark, because less shark is effective and more shark is fake. We can see that this is just a big mechanical prop. How can we keep shooting? How can we keep shooting? How can we keep moving this thing up the hill while we're waiting for the shark to work? And then finally the shark does work. I really like that they have one shark that goes left to right, one shark that goes right to left, and they have a shark that goes forward. As I was reading the Jaws log, Carl Gottlieb's book on the making of, they talk about that crazy crane that brings the shark up and down and sinking the Orca 2, actually. You know, they have the boat that's going to sink and come back up again. But like, none of that had been done before. So you got that. And then they've never done it in salt water before. So they figure it out, they stick it in salt water and the whole thing falls apart again.
Yeah.
And you're like, how could this movie ever get from A to Z? But they managed.
Let's not discount the reactions of extras to the shark as well for building that. It's one of those theatrical tricks where it's like
Right.
other people on stage have to sometimes give a new
If they get
character
invested,
their
then
power.
we're
Yeah.
invested. And that was Bob
And
Matty, who's our mechanical wizard, who created our shark and figured out how to make that darn thing work. In addition to our superstar, Bruce the Shark, we should talk about Robert Shaw as Quint.
Boy, you know, Robert Shaw, such a great actor, even before Jaws. I mean, if you go back and look at his work, you know, he did The Caretaker on film, A Man of All Seasons, where he, you know, played Henry VIII, you know, all of these great performances.
James Bond villain.
James Bond villain from Russia with
And
Love.
The Sting.
Yeah, The
One of my
Sting.
favorite movies. Yeah.
And here he was not the first choice for this role. They wanted Lee Marvin.
And they wanted Sterling Hayden.
Hayden, right? Yeah. And so Spielberg and the studio had gone down the list of folks that they thought, and I think Lee Marvin was actually the first choice. Like, he envisioned Lee Marvin in this role, and Marvin, for whatever reason, it didn't work out. But you can't, to this day, picture anybody else in that role other than Robert Shaw. And it was also a troubling sort of set experience for some of the actors, because he was an alcoholic as well. And he was dealing with all of those issues while he was working, to the point where and we'll talk about the monologue, right? The Indianapolis monologue, which, again, a breathtaking monologue that really is sort of the center of this movie. He had to go back and shoot that various times. He couldn't get it right because he was always inebriated when they were shooting it. And then finally, when he got it together, he himself was a writer, and he kind of wrote part of that speech. So such a great performance.
And a brilliantly crafted scene, because it's so funny. And so sort of you forget why they're there. They're just laughing and comparing scars, and Brody's looking at his appendectomy scar. You know, he's nothing to contribute. And then all of a sudden,
terrific scene.
We're in a whole other moment and a whole other movie.
But that speech in particular is really something else, because if you really look at that that level of writing and the way he delivers it, how the camera works to kind of go into his face and really kind of that single shot of him and the time he takes and the music that's underscored with it as well. I mean, you can just watch that scene and be like, give a good understanding of what this creature is and how bloody and violent this creature is. And that's just a testament to his performance.
Well, and why Quint is who he is. You know, when he got out of the service, what did he go and do? He spent a life, you know, hunting sharks. I had the good fortune to be part of a 50th anniversary screening at the Chicago Public Library, where they brought in representatives from the Shedd Aquarium and the Field Museum. And they were talking about, you know, aspects that were realistic or not realistic and talking about real shark behavior and things like that. But one of the fun facts that I took away from that was that at the time of this release, the story of the USS Indianapolis was classified. It was still classified in 1975 because it was so secret. Howard Sackler, who was one of the contributing screenwriters, he had a friend who was on the USS Indianapolis. And so he had heard the story from him. And that was how that story came into the script.
Wow.
And that was so most people learned about the USS Indianapolis from Jaws. It was not something that was public knowledge.
That's wild.
You know, having watched 3 feature-length documentaries and read books, to suddenly still be learning things about this movie is just such an exciting thing.
That's amazing.
It's also interesting to note that that story is actually what some wanted to use as the storyline for the sequel. They wanted to make the Jaws franchise an anthology series, but the studio is like, nope, we don't want to do that. And I'm sure when we talk about Jaws 2, we'll get into it. But that story in itself was captivating. That I think even Spielberg himself, at one point, who entertained the notion of maybe doing a Jaws 2, was like, if we do that, that's something that I would be interested in doing.
Yeah, and I think him not doing that is one of our all-time great movie losses, you know.
But he made 1941.
Yeah, see? Oh, it would have been so good. What a movie it would have been.
Well, they did make a movie, I think, USS Indianapolis, with Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage, yeah.
Yeah.
It was okay. I mean, it's no Jaws. And
obviously,
could have been a lot better, but could have been a lot worse.
Well, and they had some clarification at this screening where they said that it wasn't the sharks that killed as many men. The accurate number of 300 coming out of the water, they said it was about close to like 700 or 800 that were in the water, but that most of them died of dehydration. And exposure, and that they would drink the salt water and go crazy. I mean, yes, sharks were certainly present, but it was just a combination of them being left out there because nobody knew that they were out there. No distress signal had been sent.
As just a fun trivia fact, that Indianapolis movie is directed by our good pal Mario Van Peebles. Who will
that's right. That's right.
Oh my goodness!
Somehow survived.
Full circle.
Spoiler. Richard Dreyfuss as Matt Hooper.
Seems like the hugest pain in the ass of an actor, but God, I love him in everything he does. He's so funny. He's so real. He makes everything really personal and brings all of himself to every role. I don't think this movie works with Matt Hooper from the book. I think it only works with Richard Dreyfuss as the third foil. When he comes to dinner at their house and he's like, I didn't know what you would be serving. And of course they never invited him. Like it's said, is anybody eating that? Like, it's so great. He's again, this actors in the script does so much with so little, such small gestures to tell you all about who these people are.
Yeah. I mean, he plays the role perfectly. He just really does everything about as the scientist and that. I mean, you really buy into and believe that he is this character of this oceanographer and that he's got, all this knowledge and stuff about that. I mean, it doesn't come across as like, he's trying to do this. I mean, he feels like this guy he's lived this guy's life. I mean, he's got so many great lines throughout the entire film. Those dimensions are real, are correct. It's like he does such a great job of giving you that information where you go, oh man.
The 4 leading actors, including the mayor and Lorraine Gary, all really understand the assignment. There's no lines that are questionable or what did they
Yeah.
say? It's really, they really own everything. Yeah.
I love Dreyfuss so much, and he's fantastic in it. And I don't want to say anything negative, but I will say the one point in the movie that gives me a tiny bit of pause of like, is when he makes the funny faces at Quint. That is a moment that I'm sort of like, I don't know about that
I
choice.
dare you to cut that if you're a student. I dare you to even try.
I also wonder how much of that was scripted too.
None of it.
Yeah, there was a lot of tension between him and Robert Shaw.
Yeah.
They didn't get along very well.
Right.
Shaw pushed his buttons quite a bit. Now Dreyfuss looks back and says, he had a lot of love for Robert Shaw. But at that time, it was really tough for them to work with each other. The other thing is, like, Richard Dreyfuss turned down this role at least 2 or 3 times. He didn't accept the role. He was feeling so stuck based on the last project that he worked on, that he thought if he took this, it would probably be the end of his career. But at the same time, he was like, I got to get something. So then he finally accepted it and begged Steven Spielberg to put him into it after turning it down a few times. One particular scene that stood out for him was when he's in the cage and you see him sort of struggling with this shark and you're not knowing if he's going to survive. And at one point you think he actually doesn't survive. You feel his loss. You really, as an audience watching this movie, you fall in love with his character. And so to find out, again, spoiler, that he survives is such a relief,
He does that with a mask on too, and with all the equipment. Like, he still conveys all that sort of, I've made a terrible mistake. And you're with him on that. You're like, buddy, you did. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And then, of course, the other scene that I love with him is when he's confronting Vaughn on the beach as they're looking at the billboard. And he's like, I'm not going to be sitting here set up for a hot lunch, or I'm not getting the line right, but something like that, where, again, his humor, his sort of bombacity, his just everything Richard Dreyfuss brings to that character is great.
Well, even just little nuanced things he does, like the one moment when he crushes up the styrofoam cup when they're on there. Just the little tiny things like that. It should also be pointed out, though, when he is in the cage down there, when the shark gets in there, they actually have a little person in there to give the shark greater size and to make it look like the shark is massive and getting in there. So it's actually not him during the part when he's struggling with the shark,
like a full body shot.
Yep. Yeah. The real shark.
When you see the shark in there, and they actually have had a little person in there to help give it the scale of what they wanted.
That's the thing, they just couldn't match, could they? Was it Ron and Valerie Taylor? Their book years ago, going through the pages, get to the Jaws stuff. Where's the Jaws stuff? And it was all about the time they spent waiting to try and capture the right shark footage. And even then, like, nothing could be quite the same scale.
Yeah. Well, they made Blue Water White Death. They were the ones that were the subjects of that fantastic documentary, which if you've never seen it, I strongly recommend it. It's phenomenal. But
and that's what inspired Benchley to write the novel.
Yep, exactly.
Kevin, did you have any favorite Richard Dreyfuss moments?
I like his delivery a lot of every line, even when he's chuckling about people who are all going to die.
They're all going to die.
They're all going to die.
Yeah, I love that. And they meet Scheider. It's just like, those people out there are going to die by the way. I think that's great when he's trying to chat to the locals about the shark they've caught, the tiger shark. When he's got that real balance of like, he is generally quite good with the people around him in the public circle, but he's very conscious of wanting to inform them and make sure things are right. There's a while where he has that, he's the one person who tends to know best, but he doesn't think it's a fight that he's got to win. I really like him all the way through this. So much so that every time I watch Jaws, I watch the complete end credits to make sure that he and Scheider get to the shore while the credits are scrolling.
Nice.
And I know that always happens because I've watched it like 100 times, but I'll still be just waiting till the very end, being like, get there, that's okay, they've stood up.
Well, and it's funny because in the Piranha 3D movie that came out that Alexander Aja did. Richard Dreyfuss in the beginning is supposed to be Matt Hooper in that boat, and we find out Matt Hooper's fate. So.
And then Roy Scheider is Chief Brody, riding that middle ground, somebody who is trying to do the right thing at all times and has forces completely beyond his control, both on land and in the water. Not somebody I would have chosen based on the book. You know, I'm not picturing a tan, lean, sardonic guy. So I love the idea that he's the guy from the French Connection or 7-Ups. And, you know, like he's like, you know what? I got to get off that island and then over to that island.
Another brilliant actor. Here you had Roy Scheider, who's sort of, you know, coming into his own. He's kind of launching his career. He was a former dancer in New York theater. You know, he comes off the French Connection. He wasn't the first choice for this character. He was not even on the radar. And I think it was at a sort of a gathering, like a party, where Spielberg mentioned to him, "Hey, I'm working on this, you know, this new movie called Jaws." Scheider says, "Hey, you know, would you mind sending me the script? I'd love to take a look at it." And sure enough, Scheider pitches himself for the movie. Another performance where you just couldn't imagine anybody else in that role. Yeah. And I think that was the role that really kind of defined his career.
That and All That Jazz, I think, are the two.
All That Jazz, yeah,
two performances
absolutely.
that really
I really like him in Blue Thunder and 52 Pickup myself.
Yes, great. He brings such a sort of everyman's sort of perspective to the character of Chief Brody. Someone who the audience can identify with, because a lot of the characters around him are a little bit more eccentric. Roy Scheider's number one job is to be the shoes for the audience's perspective. And he does a great job of really giving that fear of being in the water, and also to overcome that fear when he has to and has no choice. Yeah. And so you see his journey, you know, throughout this movie, and how all the other characters really complement and supplement what he's doing. And I think he brings such a nuanced and very grounded performance to the movie itself. His time on the movie, though, was also kind of a little turbulent, because I know that he butt heads with certain folks, didn't get along, and that really went above and beyond in the sequel as well. I don't think it was a cakewalk for him to do that movie.
Yeah, he didn't want to be there after a while.
Yeah.
He's like, what do I got to screw to get off this?
Yeah. You mentioned the relationships, and I think that that's really like the heart of what he's doing there. You know, the relationship that he has with Hooper, and like just both in some of the like nicer, calmer moments, like when they're having dinner. And then the more, you know, hectic moments. I love the argument where Hooper's trying to get him to go out to the front of the thing, and Brody just won't do it. You know, it's a great little moment of dynamic. But he's also got like a really interesting like relationship with Quint. I love the moment where Hooper gets ticked at him and yells at him about the knots. And then Quint just sort of says, next time you just ask me. Like, you can see that there is like some camaraderie and some friendship there.
But also when he says, "You're not going to do this on the boat, are you?" Like, he's always the guy who doesn't quite get it yet. Like, everybody else knows that what they're attempting to do is the hugest long shot that they can possibly. They're going to go into the ocean, find a particular shark, and hope that they can make it stop eating all the people in their town. And Brody's just like, yeah, I guess that's what we're going to do. You know, like he doesn't know how hard it is yet. Whereas you feel like Richard Dreyfuss and Robert Shaw are much more realistic about the odds of them catching it, the odds of them not surviving catching it, or you know, like what they can do. He still believes in order and control. He's a perfect police officer. He still believes that there's something they can do to salvage this situation.
Another beautiful scene with him is with his son, Sean, you know, where they're at the dinner table and Sean's mimicking every move because he's under a tremendous amount of stress. And that brings a nice levity to the character and to the movie as well. And to watch Lorraine Gary watch that as well. And then they kind of revisited that scene in the sequels, but it didn't work as well. He does represent the everyman in a time where the country was going through a very tumultuous period coming off of Watergate. You have Brody here, he's trying to do his job as the chief of police of Amity Island, and he confronts not only the forces of this this creature that's out at sea that he can't really do anything about, but he's confronting the internal creatures at the island as well, in the terms of the politics that he's dealing with as well, which was kind of a metaphor for what the country was going through as well. It's like you're fighting these forces that you can't control, and how do you contain it? How do you overcome it? And I think it speaks to that time period of how do you, as an individual, get past the politics of the moment that you're living in.
Well, they jettisoned the subplot of the mafia, which is another one where I was kind of like, the mafia? But when you read the novel, you realize why Larry Vaughn cannot keep the beaches closed, because he owes money to the mob. And they have a vested interest, and the only way he can make money is if he rents the properties. And so it doesn't feel as kind of arbitrary as it does in the movie. The movie, obviously, he's trying to care for the community, but he has a personal interest in keeping those beaches open. I don't dislike not having it in the movie, but I actually I enjoyed reading that aspect of it, because do I stay alive or do I risk sacrificing others? That's the gamble he takes.
To me, Mayor Vaughn is fighting to preserve a way of life. And there is, of course, an economic, capitalistic motive there that I think the movie makes perfectly clear, and that the older I get, the more I harp on. But I do think that there is just an inability for people of the town to accept that they can't do the one thing they want to do at 8 hours a day, 3 months out of the year. They can't go in the water. Like, are you kidding me? That's that's who we are. After rereading the book, I don't miss the mafia plot. And I think, it could still be there. We just don't hear about it. He certainly goes a little nuts when he realizes that this is totally out of his control. But I think that more importantly, what I get is Brody caught between man and nature, and a community that doesn't want to accept what's happening to them.
And we have to throw out props to Murray Hamilton, because he's incredible as the mayor.
So good.
Amity, as you know, means friendship.
You say barracuda, everybody goes, what? What?
Goes, huh?
What? You yell shark. Just the way he leans in and says that. It just, it's such it's so perfect.
He's so charismatic that his
panic under him.
describes it,
Yeah. And now, in our divided country, he has become sort of the center poster boy picture, that character of what government stands for. And so I think that kind of speaks to the film's legacy and the character's legacy of the things that, don't necessarily change over time when you're dealing with capitalism.
It's unfortunate how relevant it is currently.
Yeah.
Well, that's a nice transition, because when the mayor in Jaws 1 is still the mayor in Jaws 2.
Right?
Lessons have not been learned.
But yeah, let's talk about Jaws 2. It came out 3 years later, after Jaws had become a cultural phenomenon, had made a massive amount of money. It was the most successful film in history at that point. So, of course, a sequel was almost de rigueur. And Roy Scheider was back, grudgingly so. And boy, does it show in every single frame of that movie. That guy does not want to be there this time around. We talked about The Exorcist, Katie and I, a while back. The step down from the original to the sequel is so marked because the original is so great. Jaws 2 is basically, it's a monster movie. It's a slasher movie. It is people who were like, the shark is what we want. So we're going to give you more shark and more screaming and more people getting killed, more teenagers.
I find it so dull. Criminally dull. All of the sequels I do, big surprise. I don't like the sequels to a movie that we're talking about. But you can't care about anyone. Brody is half asleep. It's also disappointing. You brought us back to this place we're familiar with characters we love. There were things that you could do, and you didn't. Hainsworth keeps trying to tell me that this is a better movie than I think it is, and I have no perspective. I can only compare it to the first movie, and it just falls down.
I mean, it is hard because it does as a comparison point, it is, a massive drop off. And I would agree with you that the first half is pretty pretty Dullsville, and there's really not a lot going on, and you're perfectly content to skip it, which is what I always did as a kid. I never even saw the first half of Jaws 2 for ages. I didn't know why this shark.
But
had
there was a
claw.
ribbon cutting ceremony. You
Right,
missed
the
it.
ribbon cutting, he gets the burn. I didn't know why he was burned. Whatever. But I will say personally, for me, I think that once they get on the boats and once we get our butts out on the water, I think it's good. It's not as good as Jaws. Let's just put that out there. But it's a solid, I enjoy the kids. I think that they've got a good, you mentioned it, like they've got a good Friday the 13th counselors kind of vibe going on with them. You got some good performances in there and some interesting kids doing some good stuff. I think if I switch gears into my slasher mode and I think about what I want out of a slasher movie, I'm like, well, these are good kids. There's good performances. There's good tension. I'm in.
That was absolutely my take on it this time. I was like, oh, it becomes a slasher movie, and I like slasher movies. So I just, if you switch gears and go, okay, it's a shark slasher movie, you can enjoy it on that level.
You're never going to top Jaws. It's impossible. I mean, very few movies can have a sequel that lives up to them, as it is. And obviously Jaws 2 is significantly, massively way below that, no question. But like others have said, when I separate myself from that and look at the movie for what it is so goofy and campy and over the top. I mean, come on, you have the water skier scene when the shark attacks and the girl in the boat is trying to fight the shark. So what does she do? I'm going to dump the gas on myself and blow up the boat and myself to try and kill the shark. I mean, that's just completely outrageous beyond belief. And then you have the great sequence where the girl's all traumatized and she's just like, shh, 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 and she finally goes, shark! It's like so completely over the top. And again, the shark is attacking and you see as it comes along, there's the one point where if you watch carefully, the top of the mouth actually turns into a triangle when it hits the side of the boat as it just misses getting the one kid. I mean, the stuff like that. And as a kid too, when you see the shark come up and completely swallow the one girl whole, I mean, those kind of things, like from that aspect, are to me what make it really entertaining. And like you said, the second half with the kids, and it's so outrageous. I mean, you got Donna Wilkes in there, who's from the Angel movie. Got to meet her at a Wasteland once. She's amazing. There's a lot of great, colorful characters in the group of the kids and all that stuff. And those elements, I think, are really cool. I mean, and again, more outrageous stuff like the shark taking down the helicopter. I mean, that's completely outrageous and crazy. But at the same time, it's like, I mean, I don't know. I just think it's kind of entertaining because it is so bad. It's kind of good. And I mean, even just the finale. I mean, the fact that he pounds on that electrical cable and the shark electrocutes itself. I mean, it's just, again, it's
and catches fire.
Yes.
Like
yes,
sharks
in the ocean.
Exactly. I mean, all that stuff is just so unbelievably over the top.
I think this conversation is my payback for saying that I thought Alien Resurrection was a good movie, just not a good alien movie.
Anish?
Okay, look, I have a soft spot in my heart for Jaws 2 and Jaws 3, which we'll talk about, not Jaws 4. Not that I think Jaws 2 or 3 are anywhere near, they're just not on the same level as the original. I only like the movie because it kept getting replayed over and over and over again on network television, and you just couldn't help but keep watching it. The first sort of approach to Jaws 2 was from director John Hancock, who has worked in the Chicago theater scene, who I've come to know. Learning about his vision originally for this movie, I would have loved to have seen his version, his take on Jaws 2, which was where it was a much darker, more character-driven screenplay. I'm not quite sure why he was let go as the original director, and they give it to Jeannot Szwarc, as the new director. But he had a much more sort of darker, menacing. Amity Island was in ruins. Dorothy Tristan, his late wife, wrote the screenplay. It would have been great to see what they had brought to the table and see that movie. This version, yes, it was all shark. It was all slasher with the teenagers and so forth. Still very much kind of a popcorn enjoyable film for me.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think that if you take it from that vein and you just say this is not. You're taking it for what it's worth, right? Jaws 2 and even Jaws 3, but it's just going to be sort of this popcorn, not thinking about too much kind of movie. Then on its face, it's a fun time. The other thing that I like about it is that I love John Williams' score in this movie too. He's probably one of the best things about the movie. If you go back and listen to that score, it's so good. He really just underscores so much of the sailing scenes as well, and you get a sense of like what the vitality of those teenagers are. The other thing was Carl Gottlieb had mentioned in a documentary that I watched about Jaws 2 was that at the time in the late 70s there was a cruising culture that was happening amongst teenagers, and he wanted to kind of grab on that cruising culture and bring it to the open waters, and that was kind of the setup for that. So I love that. And then I think the one thing that kind of continues to stick with me to this day about Jaws 2 is the death of Marge. It is terrifying.
Yeah.
It is terrifying. It's a single shot of the back of the shark where Sean is stuck on the boat.
Yep.
She saves him and pushes him on the back of the boat, and then you see her completely swallowed whole by this shark. And it's done in such a great way. And props to the director for this, but you don't see it from the front. That is left to your imagination of what that looks like.
Yep.
And it's one of those pivotal scenes and one of those moments from the franchise that sticks with you forever. I mean, I think it's one of those movies that's
throws back to what Robert Shaw says in the original. The sharks swallow you whole. We see that in Jaws too.
You said there, it's like one of the key moments of the franchise. This is the first time I've ever watched them like in a row, like thinking of them as an actual franchise. I've just always watched them willy-nilly. So it was interesting kind of thinking about it in those terms. And one thing that I picked up on, I've never noticed this before, that I picked up thinking about it in that order with Jaws 2 is really the one that establishes the concept of the fin chasing you, right? That doesn't really happen in 1. It happens a lot.
Yes. And Szwarc had basically, that was some of the things that he brought to the movie, which was where he put a cameraman on top of the mechanical shark. So you were seeing it from the fin, the angle of the fin. Which, I mean, some people may or may not like that, but it was interesting to your point, Fraser, like you had not seen that perspective from the shark's perspective before.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry to Katie, but I'm also in the Bruce Deuce fan club. It's no Jaws, which is, a 10 out of 10 all-timer, but I just think it's great, and it is a slasher movie with a shark in it, but I would say it's still better than 90 to 95% of the shark movies that came along in the wake of Jaws.
I'll take Deep Blue Sea over Jaws 2 any day of the week.
I do like Deep Blue Sea a bit more.
Deep Blue Sea is fun too, man.
Jaws 2, I like what they brought into it with the ideas of the people who were shocked and wouldn't necessarily move, so wouldn't be the most attractive bait to the shark. And then the acoustics, it is a ridiculous ending, but it's a fun ending that manages to incorporate a couple of different elements compared to what you've seen before. But I don't know if it's just because they used the fin less in the first film or if they had some different measurements. I remember first seeing Jaws 2 and thinking, if this shark gets bigger in every film, because that fin looked the size of a minibus to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, this series is going to be amazing. This is a Godzilla shark. But even the sequence with I think it's a really good scene with Roy Scheider taking them the photo of the eye, and I think to us watching the film, it's quite clearly the eye of the shark, and there is enough. I don't know if ambiguity is the right word, but it does seem murky enough for them not wanting to see it that way and pass it around and pretending they're going to give it a fair go. Right. It's got enough interesting bits in it, but I would be lying if I didn't say, I just still enjoy it because it's a slasher movie with a shark.
I do find some humor in that scene, and I do like that scene as well. Just sort of thinking about, obviously Brody is right. Brody is the hero. The councilmen all stink and are putting themselves forth. And yet at the same time, how many times has Brody come to them and been like, you guys, there's a shark, we are it's maybe valid that they're getting a little sick of it. And then he's like, oh, are you saying I haven't seen a shark? I'm like, no, dude, nobody, we know you killed the shark, all right? Like, we all appreciate what you did for us, but like, I don't know if this is a shark.
But what have you done for me lately?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we didn't even talk about the ending of Jaws, the first one, where the shark blows up when that probably is not how things would go. But Spielberg was like, no, you have to blow up the shark. It needs to be that big of an ending. That is one thing that they took moving forward with the sequels, is like that shark has to go, and it has to go big at the end. Here he catches on fire after getting electrocuted, but he pretty much blows up from here on out.
Well, in Jaws, when you see that shot of the shark descending after it blows up and you see the bloody cloud as it's going down, he recreated the same shot from Duel. Right. When the truck goes over the and you see the way everything's going like that. He literally used that as the image when he was creating that scene at the end of Jaws, when you see the big carcass and the blood plume and all that. It was literally, he basically was taking the ending of Duel and sticking it right there with that.
And it also has the same kind of dinosaur roar.
Yes, it does.
That accompanies Duel. It accompanies the Jaws descent.
Projecting Jurassic Park there. That's
it's all just a prequel.
It's all just so we can get to Jurassic Park. Any other thoughts on Jaws 2 before we zip ahead into another dimension?
Indeed.
Because Jaws 3D is indeed a whole other thing. Kevin, I'm going to start things off with you, since you did offer some positive feelings about it just now.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You're like, when did I do that? Oh, just a second ago.
There are two reasons I have positive feelings about Jaws 3. Three reasons. I'm still holding on to my 3D setup in my cinema room, so I watch it in 3D. I love whenever I look up trivia on Jaws 3D, there are always multiple items that remind you of Dennis Quaid saying he was out of his mind on cocaine for every scene. He said that in interviews. And also, I would have been probably about 7 or 8 years old, but for some reason, my dad thought we'll go and see Jaws 3D at the cinema. So it was my first cinematic 3D experience. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it blew my tiny mind. As soon as you saw little fish going about, I was impressed. And then when someone scooshed a syringe, that was me thinking this is the only way to see movies from now on. A floating limb, I was like, yeah, they didn't do that in Jaws, not in 3D. It was absolutely amazing. And it was only years later when I realized like how rubbish the rest of the film is, and even how rubbish the 3D is. But I still like my 3D that way. People go on about 3D immersing in the film. I'm like, no, poke me in the eye with things. That is what 3D is for. And Jaws 3D knows that. And that's why they messed up so badly when they had to try and render a shark coming to the screen, because they just couldn't do that with a fin. And here in the UK, we didn't really have SeaWorlds, SeaWorld setups. We've got a few sea life centres now. I don't know when they started being a thing. So that was a more exotic and impressive location for me. Like, it all worked for young me. And I can't totally get rid of that nostalgic affection. Like, I know it's a bad movie and it's a bit of a slog to get through, but there are still some bits. I know it's working up to a mad ending, and I still just look forward to that being just quite bonkers, and I'll happily sit there with the glasses on again and try and remember being easily impressed as a child, which is easy for me because I'm quite simple. It's fine.
Can we just cut to me and get my negativity over with? On this.
Balance the scales.
Only 2 things I wrote down about this movie, and the first one was, all I had to read was that Dennis Quaid was on coke the whole time. This whole movie is on coke. And my other note was when I tuned out of the movie because it was so bad, and I was looking up trivia on IMDb, and my favorite piece of trivia that I found out for all of these movies was that the original working title of this movie was Jaws 3, People 0.
Yes.
and that would have been a whole different movie.
It.
Yeah, that's what the original.
Also, how did SeaWorld not sue them? Like, SeaWorld's a real place, right? How did they
it's explicitly
tell this whole story?
Yeah, they must have done it with SeaWorld's cooperation.
Well, they
SeaWorld's
were
like, yeah, come in and tell a story about a
they
shark
were
that
not
eats everybody.
happy. They were not happy the way it was presented
Amazing.
because, you know, I
Like,
mean,
they didn't know it was going to be a Jaws movie.
yeah, I guess like the one thing that they really took exception to was employees having sex on working property.
That's right.
You know, because
Brilliant.
Leah Thompson and
Yes, we have sharks
Yes,
running
so
around, but
choice.
yeah, right. They were like,
We-
we
But
don't
don't
do that
worry,
or
no
condone
one's-
that
yeah.
at SeaWorld, you know. So
family friendly.
All right, that's my new favorite piece of trivia for now.
I thought it was bizarre that I remember it being like SeaWorld-esque, and then watching it
No,
this time,
it's
I'm like, oh no,
just
it is
SeaWorld.
SeaWorld. Yeah,
It
it was very
fully
surprising.
SeaWorld.
Shamu is in it, and
Yep.
any of us of this age know Shamu. It was I thought it was
Amazing.
terrible watching it this time. It was so slow, such a slog. But I'll give it props for one thing, so I don't say too negative. I will give the my like one note that I would have written for myself. I enjoyed that it introduced the POV from inside the shark as the shark eats the guy. That would then I think later be used much more effectively by Anaconda. But
Yes,
I enjoyed
yeah.
that.
Yeah,
I
that's
enjoyed
right,
that,
yeah.
that bit right there. I was like, oh, all right,
Anaconda.
nice. Well done.
Simon McCorkindale, the late great Simon McCorkindale's death is another death in the franchise that sticks with me.
That's a good one.
That death in the interior belly of the shark is horrific. Is horrific.
Yes, being alive and inside another creature is a running theme of nightmare for I think most
it's a
people.
terrible way to die. You know, the character deserved to die, but like but that's not the way you want to go.
I'd have to say for myself, I don't have. I mean, you guys have already pretty much covered the very minimal amount of things that I think are positive about the movie, because I agree it's an absolute mess and horrible in almost every way. But the young me, when I saw it as a kid, did appreciate Leah Thompson in the bikini. I've got to say, I mean, that was one of the highlights for me of that movie. And that, there's not much else I could really say about the movie that is positive.
I think that was her first
some things
movie,
you said
wasn't
are
it?
good,
Yes.
but yeah.
And I'll tell you what, Bess Armstrong is trying to save this
She's
movie
trying
with
so
everything
hard.
she has.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
Bess Armstrong is trying
bless her.
so hard to like invest and keep everybody like, come on, I know you're high as a kite right now, Dennis Quaid, but here, look at me.
Join me back on Earth. Yeah.
I know you're high as a kite.
Yeah.
Oh man,
She's so happy when that dolphin shows up at the end. And
Yeah.
the jump, she's thrilled. She's pumped.
Yes, she puts
Like
her
she
arms
won.
up in the air.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say about Jaws 3D, I like Kevin, I saw it in the movie theater as a kid. This was the time of the 80s where everything was coming out in 3D. You had Friday the 13th, Space Hunter, Amityville, and then this one. It was 3D was the thing, right? So it was cool to watch it in the movie theater as a kid and see that first fish, like Kevin mentioned. But the other thing I want to point out really quick is like it was the first introduction of a person of color as a primary character in the franchise,
Right.
with Louis Gossett Jr.
Yeah.
And so it was great to see that, even though the character was kind of thinly written.
But he was a bright spot too, though, for sure, no question.
Yeah. And
enjoyed
so
a
he
lot.
takes over the kind of the Murray Hamilton track, you know, the business person really, you know, doing everything to kind of keep the park open and so forth. But I agree. I think the movie was kind of a novelty when it first came out. I don't think it's held up well when you watch it on its own. The one thing that I do like about it is Alan Parker's score. Nowhere near as good as John Williams delivered, but still, for me, memorable, you know, in giving that sort of vibrancy and really sort of playfulness with the score on the theme park. And Simon Corkindale's death was just, oh my God, really terrible. Every time I watch it, it's terrible. They keep going back to the Brody family for these stories because they think that's the formula that keeps working for them. And I think at one point, like the producers, what was it, Zanuck and Richard
Brown.
Zanuck, David Brown, they wanted to like say, okay, we're done. We can't really tell this story anymore. Why don't we go and just spoof it now with Jaws 3 People 0? They really felt, even after that movie came out, that was the formula. I don't think it would have succeeded in that direction. I think Jaws 3 is still a fun film to watch, but not very good.
The aspect of the Brodies keep coming back again, watching it as a series. It's like Michael's series, you know, like he's like the guy, you know, Dennis Quaid and
the through line.
Like it's weird how how kind of central they made him as it went on.
Yeah. And then Lance Guest will take over. In the...
Well, I was going to say he goes through several career changes.
Yeah, I don't think the kids are ever played by the same actor in any of the 4 movies.
No,
is that right? Yeah.
They are consistently shifting around. Jaws: The Revenge in '87. That was the first Jaws movie I saw in the theater. And I took my brother to see that one.
Are you still making up for it today?
I mean, I have a lot to make up to with my brother. I took him to The Fly. I took him to a lot of things I probably shouldn't have taken him to. But yeah, Jaws: The Revenge is an incredible movie. Not in a good way. This movie just leans into its awfulness.
Well, it got Michael Caine his house, so that was the only movie he said.
Good for him, but it made him miss the Oscars that he won at.
Well, and Michael Caine is there doing his Michael Caine-iest Michael Caine, where he's just there to charm Lorraine Gary out of her grief over Roy Scheider refusing to come back for another movie.
Yeah.
But what are other people's thoughts about Jaws: The Revenge?
I threw my notebook across the room 20 minutes into the movie. All I needed was Sean's ridiculous drawn out death, and I was like, I am done now.
Hey, this time it's
brutal though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like the Ace Ventura scene when he's got the spears stuck in his leg, and he's like, that's all I could think of was Sean's looking at his arm like, come on.
Well, then Bruce comes up on the other side of the boat and gets him. I'm like, nice.
Sneaky like that.
And can we all remember that as ridiculous as this film gets, it starts with not only the shark arranging some flotsam and jetsam for him to go and sort out, but also ensures that the other person who is due to do that job is doing something else.
That's right.
So, Shark's master plan. I mean, this shark is getting Ubers.
This is the real Smart Shark movie.
I watched it again, and I just couldn't believe how really insulting it was to the legacy of the first movie, because now you're going back to Amity Island to a certain extent, for the first section. You're getting rid of a pretty beloved iconic character in Sean Brody, and so like, why even do that? And in such a comical way, he bites off one arm and then bites off another arm, and it's like this personal thing, which is really, I think it just did a lot of damage, and it pretty much was the nail in the coffin of the franchise. But just kind of a waste of talent and a waste of the storyline was so ridiculous and terrible. In one way, you were kind of glad to see it being put out of its misery. The
beginning is ridiculous, but it does contain one of my favorite lines, which is in the background when Sean's walking to his eventual demise, and he goes by and they're rehearsing that nativity scene, and the director off screen, the director yells at Joseph, and it's like in the nativity scene, it's like, Joseph, you're out of place, Jesus. And you hear a voice go, I'm over here, which is like a Naked Gun bit. You're like, I can't, why did we stick this in? It's great. I love it.
That is great.
I was overjoyed.
That is great.
That's part of the movie.
My overall take on it, I have to say, better than Jaws 3D.
Agreed.
More entertaining.
Agreed.
I think because it is very fundamentally flawed in its most base, but like Michael Caine is being charming. Mario Van Peebles understands how to be charismatic, and like it looks fine. You know what I mean? Like it looks good. I don't think Jaws 3D looks good. This looks good. And so, it's the Bahamas. It's beautiful. It is a perfectly acceptable piece of garbage to watch and pass some time. I stopped Jaws 3D like 3 times to like get up and like go get a drink and like wander around. I made it through this whole thing.
Because Jaws 3D was so absolutely, utterly god awful that it's kind of like The Revenge, as terrible as it is too, it is horrible. It makes, again, Jaws 2 look like a masterpiece by comparison to what came after. But that said, there are still things that I do enjoy about it. I mean, I know it's super goofy and corny, but Sean's death, to me, it's so violent and brutal and outrageous completely. But the gore of it is really like intense.
Yeah,
and
we haven't
extreme,
seen that.
Right, exactly. And for a Jaws film, I mean, it was definitely very, taking it to the next level. And I did like that. And I mean, I do like, Michael Caine. And I mean, all the characters I think are decently well done for what they are. They don't have much to work with, but they do kind of make the most of it for that. And I mean, the whole story, again, it's just completely outrageous and dumb, but it does look good. Like you said, there's a lot of really cool shots. I mean, some of the underwater sequences are neat and that, but I mean, you do have outrageous stuff that Katie even mentioned earlier, like how did Mario's character survive? I mean, he was clearly done, but somehow he magically comes back and is able to help save the day, which was great.
There are two versions of that?
Yeah,
The ending.
yeah.
I
The
think
one
that's the
readily
version,
available, he survives.
because there's one version which I think is he is dead. Like
Yes,
they
that's right.
Yeah, he does
Oh.
not survive being
Well,
in
and the shark doesn't blow up.
galaxy.
Like in the alternate ending, he gets gored, but he doesn't explode. And
and that's the thing. They made the way the shark dies so complicated. It's like we're going to
Hard
use
to
this
follow.
device to kind of give
Using
it a
that
heart
thing to make
attack.
him jump
and then-
out of the water, and then they stab him with the ship,
It
or
was
with the
so
mast
weird,
of the ship.
and
That was,
it's like I think they just ran out of ideas at this point. Like, what are we going to do to kind of button this up?
I just didn't want to steal Katie's thunder because I know we share.
You can have it.
We share
can have it. Go
problem
ahead.
with this.
Yeah.
This is a film in which Ellen Brody has flashbacks to at least 2 moments she
wasn't there for.
so, including the end of Jaws. Like, nobody was there near the end of that. Apart from
So
Scheider.
infuriating.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I find that, I agree with someone called it insulting. It's insultingly bad. It is comical when you think of how well the shark did just to keep track of the Brody family.
Yeah, where are they?
I think he went on one of those ancestry
He stuck
websites.
a homing device on you at some point.
And then just zigzagging wherever they go.
Yeah.
If they'd stayed on land, it would have burrowed through somehow and made some trench.
That's right.
I don't think they give Ellen Brody a good enough storyline either. I don't think they don't do well by her, and they obviously just think we'll give her a psychic link with a shark because psychic links with animals happen in all the best movies. So that's what they've done. And Kane's all right. He's a bit of fun, but it's really muddled. I remember hearing, I think in the novelization or maybe the first draft, he was also supposed to be a drug smuggler.
That's right.
That's how he made his money. Whereas at least we just get cheeky chappy Michael Caine, and I do like that, but he doesn't add enough. The one that stands out for me is Van Peebles. Yeah, I think it's great and doesn't get enough to do. Like he's the charisma of the film.
Hey, they let him live.
Yeah, well,
in one version.
In one version.
and they let him do that accent. I mean, let's also,
I also think they let him write all his own stuff. I think he wrote all his own dialogue.
I believe that.
Yeah.
There's definitely moments where the accent falters and you're like, uh-oh. Every once in a while slips away.
I think I would have liked this more if they'd ended it and Michael Caine had popped his head out of the plane and went, "You were only supposed to blow the bloody jaws off." that would have left me smiling. I know, I just wanted an excuse to make that gag. Sorry.
Appreciate it.
Amazing.
We'll see if it survives the edit.
I'll toss one last sort of compliment out for Jaws the Revenge. I think the banana boat scene is not bad. I think that's a pretty decent little death right there.
Where it comes and grabs the chick
The
off
lady.
the back.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good little moment.
agreed.
Because it was going for Thea. It was going for her because it's
She's
personal.
Brody.
Right.
Always good
Right.
for Brody.
I can tell everybody's done talking about Jaws the Revenge. Let's circle back around, celebrating 50 years of Jaws. Like I said, I spent the entire week, last couple weeks actually, watching the documentaries. Also, there's a new Jaws at 50 documentary out by Laurent Barzaroux, who did the original making of Jaws. And I'm so impressed with the fact that those two documentaries, plus The Shark is Still Working, plus the Jaws log, there's so little redundancy. Like, I actually felt like I wasn't hearing the same story over and over and over again. I was constantly learning things. And I think that's incredible. The fact that people continue to remember things or find things or learn to look at this movie through a different lens. It's really exciting. And I do highly recommend that Jaws at 50, because you have Steven Spielberg looking back on a career as opposed to the early documentaries where he's looking ahead to having a career thanks to this movie. Now we see the career that he was able to have as a result of the success here.
I did get a chance to watch the Jaws at 50 documentary. That was the one thing I really wanted to do. And I agree with you. It's absolutely fantastic. And like with The Shark is Still Working, I do love that they have the Joe Spinell cameos in both of those.
When Steven Spielberg does not get nominated for Best Director.
Which is madness. How do you nominate a movie for Best Picture and not include the director?
Well, how do you nominate that
director?
exactly this movie, which basically happened because of Steven Spielberg? But yeah, final thoughts on Jaws and the Jaws legacy. Ryan, I'll kick things off with you.
There are a few perfect movies that exist. Jaws is a perfect film. And I mean, all of the crazy stories and everything that went behind it are the reason that it became the perfect masterpiece movie it is. I mean, it casts a very long shadow that, like we've even illustrated, has never even come close to being recaptured and likely never will.
Thanks, Ryan. Fraser.
Yeah, similar to Ryan. Perfect movie. One of my favorites of all time. And followed by, in Jaws 2, a top 10 shark movie of all time, which is admittedly a very low bar.
Yeah. Katie.
Anish said something way long ago. You didn't think this movie would be made today? I think about that a lot because before I watched it again this time, I watched Out of Africa, which I hadn't seen it since the 80s when it came out, which I loved at the time. But there's a scene in that where they're out, Meryl Streep and Robert Redford are out there, and they get confronted by two lions. And it's a very scary, tense scene, and then they shoot the lions. And this time when I watched Out of Africa, I was like, maybe don't go on a date in the lion's house. And I brought that theme with me into my viewing of Jaws this time. We are rooting for the people who pick this fight. Like, the shark lives there, eating dinner that's provided for him, like out there in the wild. And we're like, oh, no. We have to be able to swim. I'm not the person to make it, obviously, but I would love to see the person who comes at Jaws from a more environmental perspective, a more anti-capitalism perspective, and figures out what that story is today. I really don't need any more Jaws movies because I just watched 3 that I thought totally sucked. But I also wrote down Jaws is other people. I don't know what I meant by that, but that's my last note on the movie that I have. But, yeah.
Anish.
I think for a certain generation of folks, this movie is going to be one of those films that you would ask, anyone, if you only could take a few movies to an island and those are the only movies you could take, Jaws would definitely be one of those. It's a quintessential film that I think is probably one of the best films of all time. It never gets tiring watching it over and over again. Since I was a little kid to now when middle age, I always find something new in watching it on subsequent times. And I've seen it so many times. The other thing I think about Jaws is that, it was the launch of the summer blockbuster. It was one of those films that defined what the summer blockbuster should be. And ever since then, you don't think of the summer without some kind of film anchoring that time of period in the year. It exemplified like the perfect film for escapism during the summer. So there's a different level of appreciation for what that film represented for filmmaking and for film goers. Its legacy is definitely cemented in the minds and feelings of everyone who's watched it.
And Kevin.
I zoned out for a moment there because I thought that was so brilliant that Anish used the word quintessential to describe Jaws.
I see what you did there.
It's
Quint essential.
Nicely done, Anish.
Oh, man.
Really good.
It's my
Genius.
favorite film of all time. It used to be my Sunday afternoon comfort movie. If nothing else was on, put on Jaws. I wouldn't choose to rewatch the sequels in the same way, but there are many worse franchises out there for the lowest of the lows if you want to explore those. But it's a masterpiece. It's perfect. We discussed whether or not it's a horror. I think we may have forgotten to mention that it still has one of the best jump scares of all time.
Yeah.
That timing. I think it still catches me off guard every single time. And I know what's coming, but it's just a slight delay in the construction of that scene. And it's just flawlessly done. It'll be interesting to see how it does sort of fare over time. Like, I think its reputation holds up now strongly, but I've never really spoken to many younger film fans who finally checked out Jaws. On a bucket list of places to visit, I have Japan, and my partner knows this. It's because it's now the only place it still has a universal Jaws ride. I was like, I never got there, and I'd want to do it, and that's why, for all that Japan can offer me,
that's why you want to go.
Yeah. And I'm like, it's the last Jaws ride.
So do you want to go to Martha's Vineyard and jump off the Jaws Bridge?
No, because that would be physically going in the water.
Oh, okay. So, okay, gotcha. You'd be afraid Bruce would be waiting for you down there. Okay.
Here we are 50 years on. And I think when a movie reaches that kind of vintage, it's easy to start to take it for granted. To just go, oh yeah, Jaws, that's a real good movie. Oh yeah, Jaws, I like that one. Oh yeah, Jaws, that's a perfect movie. But going and watching it back to front and actually going on that ride and recognizing, oh wow, this is why this movie works as well as it does. You know, coming into, planning to do this panel and just trying to kind of figure it out. Like, why is this such a perfect machine? So I think it's worth everybody's time, even if you think you know Jaws, to go back and watch Jaws and actually go for that ride again, because it does pay off and it does remind you why it's a masterpiece. Kevin, I have faith that this one is going to hold up. I think it will continue to endure for cinema fans, because it does just work on so many levels. It is kind of a miracle of a movie where it just never steps wrong. Again, this was a conversation I was really looking forward to, and you all did not disappoint. Thank you so much. Looking forward to having you all on again in another 50 years so we can talk about Jaws at 100. Keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.